Hey everybody, it's Jim here, and I love offset guitars. And today we're going to be talking about the two kings of that category, the Fender Jaguar and the Fender Jazzmaster. In this video, we will be doing a brief sound comparison between the two of them to give you a general idea of how they may differ in certain areas, as well as having a discussion afterwards where I talk about some of the differences in the feel, the playability, and the specs that make them unique to each other. We are going to be starting off though with the sound samples because that's what 90% of the people that click these kinds of videos are interested in. I figured might as well get it out of the way and not waste anybody's time. To begin with though, it is worth noting both of these guitars have been modified, but been modified very similarly. Lindy Fralin stock pickups with an overwound bridge, Lindy Fralin stock pickups with an overwound bridge. So a little bit hotter output from the bridge pickup, and both of these guitars, both of them have CTS pots and a Switchcraft jack, so all equal on that. Both are made of alderwood, rosewood on the fingerboards. Not much else to say about that. We're going to be running right through the Tone King Gremlin. Any additional drive that you may hear when we go into our over-the-top section will be the Gremlin's lead channel with the Benson preamp pushing it even further. So let's get started with that part. get into the differences between these two guitars, I would like to speak about a few things that they do have in common with each other, mainly the vibrato and the bridge. This vibrato, to me, is the absolute best in the business out of any brand, any make, any model. There is nothing that feels quite as nice and quite as natural to me specifically than the one that comes on a Jaguar or a Jazzmaster. You also have a bridge, and you're going to see varying versions of them. This one is a Mustang bridge. There's also Stay Trend bridges, a Mastery bridge, and a lot of these guitars ship with the vintage bridge, which some people, they immediately kind of throw into the parts bin and replace with one of the aforementioned bridges. And that all has to do with break angle, strings popping out of the saddles. And one common problem people do have here is, I mentioned the break angle. What that is the distance, the angle that comes from the actual string from the bridge downwards. If it is too low, you will have strings popping in and out of the slots. That's not a really good experience. So two things that people do to mitigate this problem on both of these models: you can add in a neck shim, and what that will do, the shim will increase the angle here of the neck, so it points it a little bit more upwards, so you can raise the bridge to get a better break angle. That's one way of doing it. The other thing is, like I said, replacing the bridge system itself, but really increasing your string gauge will do a lot too, because the higher tension of the heavier strings will help it stay in tune and help the strings actually from slipping out of the slots. Another thing that these guitars, when in their traditional form, do share is the rhythm circuit, which is at the top of the guitar right here. When it's down, it is disengaged, meaning that you can select your pickups via these on the Jaguar or the three-way switch on the Jazzmaster, and these two knobs are going to be allowing you to control your volume and your tone. When you switch it up, all of these are bypassed, and what you'll have is one volume, one tone, and that's pretty much it on the neck pickup. Another thing worth noting here that makes it a little bit different, the pot value for the little mini volume that's in this is a different degree to the 1 meg pot that is in the main volume circuit. So you get a lot mellower sound, and it really lends itself to being named aptly the rhythm circuit. But there are two major differences between a Jazzmaster and a Jaguar. The first being the scale length of the instrument. This has the traditional 25.5-inch scale length that a Fender guitar would typically use, such as a Stratocaster or a Tele. So if you're somebody who is transitioning from one of those guitars and you're into the world of offsets, this is going to feel extremely familiar to you for a few reasons. Not just because of the actual distance that your hand is going to stretch as far as your left hand when you're sitting to fret it, but the other thing is the string tension is going to feel a bit more similar in that aspect if you're using the same gauge of strings. And by comparison, the Jaguar has a 24-inch scale length, just like the Fender Mustang does. And that translates to a few different things that you will notice if you sit down to play one of these. You feel a little bit more compact with the guitar itself. Despite the guitars having big bodies on them, having a shorter scale length means that the guitar is physically closer to you. The first fret is closer to me on this one than it is on the Jazzmaster. The second thing, which might be a little bit more noticeable, is the string tension. The string tension is going to be a lot slinkier given that you're using the same gauge of strings on both guitars on a 24-inch scale length than a 25.5-inch scale length. And while the Jaguar and Jazzmaster do have a lot in common with the electronics in regards to both having the rhythm circuit and the 1 meg pots, which help them have that really crisp high end and bite to them, there are a few things that are a little bit different and may impact how you actually approach these when composing and switching in between pickups in a song itself on the go. That is because on the Jaguar, you have these three little switches here. When this is down, it's off for the neck pickup, engaged. So as it is right now, this would just be the neck pickup on. Pull that one up, the bridge pickup is on. To turn off the neck, switch it back. So it's not as simple as the Jazzmaster, which is just a traditional three-way toggle switch. Very, very easy on one of those. But you might be wondering, what is the third switch here on the Jaguar? This is called the choke, and it does pretty much exactly what the name would imply it does. It kind of strangles the sound a little bit, and it's definitely a unique tone. It's not something I find myself using very much, but it is available on a Jaguar while it is not available on a Jazzmaster. And that leads us to the final major difference between these two guitars, and that is the pickups themselves. If you've ever looked at a Jaguar and thought, why does it have these metal claws on it? They're actually there for a reason. These pickups are basically like hotter Strat pickups, and these are here, the claws, to help reduce some of the hum that single coils might typically have on it. So this guitar, with gain in its stock form, does a really good job of handling it pretty well. While the Jazzmaster, on the other hand, has a completely different approach to the design of the pickups that are used in this. Many players often confuse the traditional Jazzmaster pickups with P90s. Outside of the aesthetic, they don't have much in common with them. I have made several videos where I compare P90s with Jazzmaster pickups. I even did one with a Jazzmaster having P90 style pickups versus this exact guitar here. If you're interested in that, you can click, learn a little bit more to have at it with that. I believe that the neck pickup of a Jazzmaster clean is the best neck pickup tone out of any Fender style instrument that I've ever heard, unless you're going for a Stevie Ray Vaughan kind of thing on a Strat. There's nothing that is gonna beat this guitar's neck pickup in my book, and it's my favorite selling point of the guitar. And we're getting towards the end of the video, but a few other things that I think are worth noting here. Both of these guitars on average are going to be heavier than a Stratocaster or a Telecaster. Sure, there's going to be examples where you find light versions of these guitars, but in general, this is going to be at least 8 pounds in regards to the Jazzmaster, and then the Jaguar is typically going to weigh even more. And when you think about it and you have a look at them, it makes a lot of sense. More plastic on the Jazzmaster, more kind of metal parts on the Jaguar, and all of that adds mass, which is weight, yada yada yada. It makes sense why this guitar is typically going to be a little bit heavier on average. But really, if you're looking for something different to add to your guitar collection, or just something that you want to start fresh with and make your main guitar, that's what I did with that Jazzmaster for the better part of a decade, and served me very well for that purposes. You could go a lot worse than buying either of these two guitars. They're both stellar in their own rights, albeit different. I'd highly recommend not just watching people like me on YouTube, but if you're curious about these models, go into your local store if they do have them in stock and try them in person. You might be surprised which one you would prefer. But now I'd like to hear from you guys. If you had the choice, which would you rather have and why? The Jazzmaster or the Jaguar? I don't want any third options. I don't want to hear about Mustangs. I don't want to hear about Duosonics. This is only about Jags and Jazzmasters. I'm very interested to see which one you would prefer if given the choice. If you found this video useful or enjoyable, please like, subscribe. I really do appreciate all of you that support this channel on a regular basis. It does mean the world to me, even all these years after beginning this channel. I really do mean that. And I will see you on the next video. Take it easy, everybody.